So today I would like to talk a little bit about the EQUATOR Network checklists, what they mean when you're developing a health or clinical research paper, and I'll provide a little bit of background on the EQUATOR Network itself. So, poorly, poorly reported research can lead to misinterpretations, flawed conclusions, and ultimately misguided healthcare decisions. When key details are missing or unclear, doctors, policymakers, and researchers can struggle to accurately assess the validity of a study, and ultimately, this can lead to ineffective or even harmful medical practices. So, this is why proper research reporting matters. It ensures transparency, reproducibility, and credibility. So, by following established research reporting guidelines, like those from the EQUATOR Network, researchers can present their findings in a way that's clear, complete, and useful for advancing medical knowledge and improving patient care. So, let's talk about the EQUATOR Network, the source for guidance on how to report medical research. So, the EQUATOR Network is an umbrella term, or it's an umbrella organization that brings together researchers, medical journal editors, peer reviewers, developers of reporting guidelines, research funding bodies, and other collaborators that all have a mutual interest in improving the quality of research publications and of research itself. So the program grew out of the work of CONSORT and other guideline development groups. So before the first EQUATOR Network meeting in 2008, it was reporting guidelines in the literature were reviewed and their authors were all interviewed to identify any issues that these individuals encountered when they were developing them. The outcome of these efforts helped help the initial EQUATOR Network group to prioritize the main activities for a successful start of the group's objective, which was to improve the quality of research, of reporting of health research. So the results of this initial work were published in 2008 in the journal PLoS Biology. Um, and so the network's mission was, or currently still is, to achieve accurate, complete, and transparent reporting of all health research studies to support, as I mentioned, reproducibility and usefulness. Its work increases the value of health research and helps to minimize avoidable waste of financial and human investments in health research projects. Medical research costs time and money, so this is very important. So, a library of checklists covering the reporting of many different types of health related research has since been developed since the network was established in 2008. New reporting checklists, in addition to previously developed checklists, these were referred to as extensions, are regularly added to the network's expanding libraries. So, what does all of this mean for medical writers and authors developing papers? Well, the study reporting checklists from the EQUATOR Network are research for structuring your paper and contribute to getting your paper published in a timely manner. They really are an essential guide when starting work in a manuscript, and I can't stress enough to check what reporting checklist is applicable to your paper before you start writing. Don't leave it till the time of submission, when you may realize that the journal requires an EQUATOR Network checklist be submitted along with your manuscript. So, if you review the checklist at this stage, you may realize that information specified for inclusion in your manuscript is missing. You'll now have to go back to find this information, add it to the manuscript, notify the authors of your delay, and then the authors may have to then approve this updated final version. So this will delay your submission and will reflect poorly on you as a medical writer for not checking this in advance. So really do check this before you start work. Journals may in fact return a paper without even sending it for peer review if the submitted document does not adhere to an EQUATOR Network checklist. So all journals that support the guidelines of the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, the World Association of Medical Editors, WAME, and the Committee on Publication Ethics, COPE, should necessitate that submitted manuscripts be developed according to the Equator Network checklist that's relevant to the paper, be it a systematic literature review, an observational study, a case report, or a randomized controlled trial. So any reputable journal publishing clinical research will be a member of the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, the ICMJE. So that is journals that are members of the ICMJE are encouraged to incorporate the committee's recommendations into their instructions for authors and make it explicit in those instructions that they follow the ICMJE recommendations. These recommendations in turn specify that manuscripts should be developed according to an applicable Equator Network checklist. Often high impact journals, which I like to refer to as the top shelf journals, such as the Lancet, the New England Journal of Medicine, the Journal of the American Medical Association, the JAMA group of journals. These all rigidly require that papers submitted to them adhere their content to an Equator Network checklist, and they may outright reject a paper without sending for peer review if this is not done, as I mentioned. So adhering your paper to an Equator Network checklist is especially true for papers that report randomized clinical trial results. These must follow the CONSORT checklist. This checklist has been around since the 1990s, before the Equator Network was set up, and it's been updated twice, most recently in 2010. So CONSORT is an evidence-based minimum set of recommendations intended to facilitate complete and transparent reporting of randomized controlled trials and subsequently aid their critical appraisal and interpretation. So there are 25 items in the CONSORT checklist. Let's have a quick look. And these that specify what information should be reported in your paper. Some items may be non-applicable to your trial, and that's okay. It's okay to report them as NA. Some information surrounding randomization and the statistical analysis methodology are quite specific, but this information should be available in a study protocol or statistical analysis plan. If you're unable to source certain information, I recommend reaching out to the trial designer, statistician, or co-authors who should be able to provide this. So a journal is considered to endorse CONSORT if it incorporates its guidelines and editorial process in any of the following ways. So one, a journal explicitly states it supports the CONSORT statement. So the statement kind of collectively refers to the checklist and or a trial participant flow diagram. So the flow diagram is a standard aspect of any health or clinical research manuscript, and it shows the movement or the progress of participants through a clinical trial program. And two, the journal's instruction to authors recommend or require researchers to follow CONSORT when preparing their manuscripts. So this is the second way that a journal can say it endorses the use of it. And thirdly, authors are asked to submit a CONSORT checklist and or flow diagram along with the manuscript. The third option is, from my experience, the most typical. So in short, if a journal integrates CONSORT into its workflow, whether through guidelines, recommendations, or submission requirement, it's considered an endorsement. So to sum up, complete, accurate, and transparent reporting is an integral part of responsible research conduct. Reporting guidelines are important tools for achieving high standards in reporting health studies. So without proper reporting, studies may be difficult to replicate, critical data can be overlooked, and ultimately scientific progress may be hindered. So in short, clear and structured reporting it's not just about good writing, it's essential for trust in science and better health outcomes. To reach their potential, reporting guidelines need to be used widely and routinely by researchers, authors, editors, peer reviewers, and this effort needs to be strongly supported by research funders and regulatory bodies. And remember, use the checklist in your writing For example, structure your paper according to the CONSORT checklist if you're reporting a randomized controlled trial. Collect information from the source files that requested when you begin writing. Once you have this information, the paper will write itself. I hope you found this interesting. If there's any other topics related to the EQUATOR Network guidelines and how they may impact your manuscript development, or if you'd like to hear about any particular checklist, do leave a note in the comments. Thanks.